One of the big topics that we like to talk about, that I like to talk about here on this channel, is the Red-Green Alliance, this alliance between Marxists and Islamists. And as I've mentioned before, this merger of Islam and Marxism is embodied in the single person of Zohran Mamdani, the mayor of New York, who is both a communist, a socialist, whatever you want to call him, a Marxist, member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and of course a 12er Shiite Muslim. That is the same branch of Islam that is the Iranian regime. And just a few weeks into his reign of terror in New York City, things are already getting pretty bad. So I would like to take you through some of the headlines that we're seeing coming out of New York and then talk a little bit about what's happening there. So here is Zohran Mamdani talking about his new plan to raise taxes. Take a look at this.
What would rather do is ensure that they remain as they are so that the city can be on firm financial footing. However, in order to get to this point of closing the gap on both this fiscal year and the next fiscal year, we are forced to raid the rainy day fund, the retiree health benefits trust reserve, and to increase property taxes across these other years.
Okay, so we're raising taxes. We are raiding the rainy day fund. And why is he doing all this? Well, he's doing all this because he has presented a budget that requires more money, and he just can't find the money anywhere. So we get statements like this.
Part of this path is a property tax increase. This would effectively be a tax on working and middle-class New Yorkers who have a median income of $122,000. The second path also requires us to raid our reserves. It would mean withdrawing $980 million from our city's rainy day fund in fiscal year 2026 and $229 million from the retiree health benefit trust in fiscal year 2027. These are steps that have been taken before, but only in moments of extraordinary external crisis. Mayor Bloomberg's response to the 2008 financial collapse and Mayor de Blasio's response to the enormous revenue shortfall caused by the pandemic. We do not want to have to turn to such drastic measures to balance our budget.
You know, what's amazing about this clip is that by mentioning, by mentioning the previous mayors who, Bloomberg and de Blasio, who also raided these funds in order to balance their budgets, he actually indicts himself. Let me explain what I mean. He mentions that they each raided these funds because of significant crises, the financial crisis of 2008 and the pandemic. Now, say what you will about whether or not the government should have been bailing people out in the financial crisis of 2008, but he says right there that it was because of these crises. And the reason that he's raising taxes now is not because of some short-term crisis that needs to be mitigated. It's because he's decided to present a big budget. Take a look at this New York Post story. Zohran Mamdani admin live updates. New York City mayor unveils record $127 billion budget, up a whopping $11 billion from this year. The eye-popping amount that one insider called insanity, right, is up $11 billion. It includes a whopping 9.5% proposed property tax hike on New Yorkers, which he claims would be a last resort, right? I have no choice. It's a last resort. Why is it a last resort? Because Kathy Hochul, the governor, refuses to raise taxes on the rich. Zohran Mamdani has declared property taxes will require a 9.5% hike across New York to make up for Governor Kathy Hochul's refusal to hike taxes on New York's wealthy. He will also drain the city's rainy day fund by $1 billion. And it's a last resort. It's only because Kathy Hochul isn't willing to raise taxes. The options of the second path are the options of the last resort. Oh, there's no other means at arriving at a balanced budget. Take a look at this. A woman in New York is outraged by the state of the city since Mamdani took office. Streets are filled with human feces. Take a look at this if you can stomach it.
Bro, this sidewalk is filled with shit. Like, this is
unbelievable.
Ridiculous. I'm scared I'm gonna step in it. But yeah.
New York City, folks.
I ain't never seen. Bro.
New York City. And this reminded me of a clip. My good friend Rabbi Daniel Schombach on his YouTube channel, he interviewed Robert Spencer, the great scholar and expert on Islam, who wrote a book about Mamdani, and he interviewed him before the election, before Mamdani was elected. And there was this one little moment in there where he was talking about what to expect from Mamdani, and he was talking about the chaos that would be expected. Look at this short clip. It stuck in my memory from when I watched this video months ago.
I was saying about what are his roots in defunding the police.
Yeah. There's that aspect, but also there's the chaos aspect, which is something that Marxists actively want to bring about. Now, you might think, well, clearly he couldn't, surely not. He must not want to defund the police in order to create crime rates. That would be crazy. Well, that's actually Marxism. The whole idea is to allow the city to collapse into chaos, which would then justify the authoritarian measures that Marxists favor. There has never been a Marxist regime that's not an authoritarian regime. And authoritarian regimes often have the excuse that they have to do these things in order to preserve order. Well, you can't say that you have to do these things in order to preserve order unless you have disorder. And you're going to get disorder if you defund the police. So it's not a bug, in other words, it's a feature.
You see that? In other words, the chaos that we're seeing in New York City right now is intentional. It's the only way it works. So I have no choice. I have to raise taxes. I must. That's the only way that we can keep the city running. We have to raise taxes. We have to accrue more power to the government because we simply have no choice. And that is what Robert Spencer was talking about. The chaos, the decay, the decline. When we look at socialist policies and say they're failing, they fail. Why do people keep voting for it? Why do people want them? They fail. They're not failing. This is what they're supposed to do. They want to crush the working class. They want to crush the middle class. They want to tax the rich. And they want to accrue more power, arrogate more power to the government. And the only way to do that, the only way to have a cover for that, as Robert Spencer explains, is if there's all this chaos that needs to be solved. So New York City is absolutely collapsing, and that's where we are. Take a look at this. Besides the collapse, the other side of the red-green alliance, it's not just that Marxism destroys cities, but take a look at this. This is New York City and a Muslim call to prayer. This ain't the Middle East, folks. New York. Welcome to New York, greatest city in the West. Let's also bear in mind that Islam, and I've mentioned this many times in my videos, Islam is a political movement. And again, I don't say that as an epithet. Yes, it's a religion. It has a religion. If Marxists, if communists suddenly said, actually, Karl Marx was a prophet and God spoke to him, and or whatever God they make up spoke to him, and he was a prophet, and the Communist Manifesto is a divine text, and we're a religion. Okay, so now they have the protections of a religion, and now it's like you're bigoted, you're against a religion if you're opposed to Marxism. It's a political philosophy. What makes something a political philosophy or not or a religion has nothing to do with whether or not there's belief in God. It's to do with what are its goals. We've talked about this. The goal of Islam is not for the whole world to be Muslim. Yeah, it would be great if everyone was Muslim according to them, but they're fine if you live as a dhimmi, as you live as a second-class citizen under it. The stated goal, I'm going to say this again, I've repeated it before, but it's worth repeating. The goal of Judaism, it's not even the Jews. The goal of Judaism is that the entire world recognize the God of Israel, and that the nation of Israel is the catalyst for that. Okay? It's not to make everyone Jews. That everyone recognize the God of Israel. Not to rule over other nations, not to have governance. In fact, the land of Israel, the nation state of Israel, which is of, I guess, the religion has a national component to it, actually has borders, specific borders. It's supposed to be a specific part, very, very small part of the world. In other words, it doesn't seek world dominance. It seeks that the whole world recognize the God of Israel. Christianity, similarly, Christianity seeks that the entire world accept Jesus as their Lord and Savior. That is the goal of Christianity. It's not a political goal. It's a faith goal. Both Judaism and Christianity have a faith goal. The goal of Islam is to govern the entire world. It literally is a political movement. It has a religious aspect to it. It's built around an idea of a prophet and a God and everything, but it is a political movement. So we have to keep that in mind when you see something like a Muslim call to prayer being broadcast like that in the city of New York, or when you see these big prayer gatherings in Western cities where they take over, a big downtown street and all the Muslims are praying on the street there. These are political demonstrations. They are projections of power. The inconvenience to everyone else who's hearing the call to prayer or that street has to be blocked off for that prayer service are not a byproduct of the fact that they're doing this in public. It is the reason that they're doing this in public. Okay, that's what this is actually about. And it goes along with the chaos issue that Robert Spencer was raising before, that it's not a byproduct, that chaos is a byproduct of the socialist policies. It is the goal of the socialist policies because it provides the pretext for the arrogation of greater powers to the government, which is ultimately the goal here. Okay. For good measure, let's just watch this little video. And with that, we will end because this one was just kind of.
Want to see a liar?
I want to say it very clearly. I will not defund the police.
Lie.
I am in favor of defunding the police.
I want to speak to the memory of my aunt who stopped taking the subway after September 11th because she did not feel safe in her hijab.
Oh, wait, another lie.
I was speaking about Zerafui, my father's cousin.
Doesn't wear a hijab.
I don't really have opinions about the future of Hamas and Israel beyond the question of justice and safety.
Maybe he's telling the truth on this one. Oh, wait, nope, lie.
The struggle for Palestinian liberation was at the core of my politics and continues to be. I am not, and nor have I ever called for the legalization of prostitution.
You guessed it, lie.
You support decriminalizing prostitution?
Yes. My fundamental belief that sex work is work. I would be happy to work with the president and the administration.
Lie.
We need to be doing here in our city is to end the chapter of collaboration between City Hall and the federal government.
I don't believe that the role of the mayor is to police speech.
Lying again.
There are consequences for speaking up in favor of apartheid.
So just find out who you're voting for before you vote who you.
Yeah, folks, look, I don't know how to say this, but this whole Zoran Mamdani thing, it's a bad scene, and let me just, before I let you go, let's talk about what this actually means. Okay. Because the guy rolls out $127 billion budget. Okay. It's the biggest budget in New York City history. He then says, oops, there's a deficit, got to raise taxes. Okay. That's the first step. That's the socialist playbook, as Robert Spencer said there. Every single time you spend like there's no tomorrow, you create a crisis, you create chaos, you blame the rich, and then you dump the bill on the middle class so you can hollow out the middle class. The lower classes end up becoming wards of the state, essentially. They need the government programs. That's the goal, is to get more and more people into that bucket who you totally control, who don't have any autonomy and independence. The rich people will either pay up or they'll leave, okay? And that's really the problem with this system when you have a country like the United States where people can move to other states. So they raise property taxes, they jack up rents, they chase businesses out, and they turn New York into a city that people are running away from. Okay, and the streets get disgusting. Public safety. Public safety is less and less. There's less and less public safety, and look, socialists always talk about compassion, but look at the consequences of it. when rents go up, when small businesses shut down, when families, can't afford the basics. Okay, it's really about control. It's also punishing people who are productive and scaring them away. And, the collapse of a city, this is what happens here. There's all this. New York City doesn't have a money problem. It has a socialism problem. Mamdani is running an experiment with other people's lives and money, and it's falling apart very, very quickly. But understand, as I said from Robert Spencer, this is not, this is not a mistake. This is not what Mamdani. This isn't like, oh no, his policies aren't working. Okay, this is the playbook. This is what they're doing. And with these other candidates who are running these, the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America, are running candidates like Mamdani. Generally, they're people from immigrant backgrounds, brown people. A number of them are Muslims. All over the country, they're doing this. They're running these candidates who the politically correct woke team in politics in America are enamored with. They see them as like, they're this noble class of brown immigrants. And they're electing these people all over the place, and they will destroy America. And let's not be surprised. Socialists, the Marxists, want to destroy America. They teach their kids that America is evil. Of course they want to destroy America. When they have been saying for decades that they hate capitalism and they hate the rich and they hate America, let's take them at their word. Same thing with the Muslims. We've talked about this many times in my videos, that the Muslim Brotherhood, in its explanatory memorandum for the United States, says that the goal is to destroy Western civilization. So when they're enacting policies, when a guy like Mamdani, who's both a socialist and a Muslim, is enacting policies that are destroying a great American city, don't say, oh, his policies aren't working. The problem with New York right now with Mamdani is that his policies are working. That's the issue here. All right, I hope this video was interesting. It's certainly not pleasant. Feel free to drop a comment in there. Let me know what you thought of this, and please keep spreading the word about the channel, and check out all the great content we're putting up at Israel 365.